Okay, so you're diving deep into AI image generation, huh? Smart move. Things are changing crazy fast.
Mm.
And you've been looking into Flux specifically.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
This open source model has got everyone buzzing. Some are even saying like Midjourney who?
Yeah, and when I saw AI girlfriend pop up in one of the YouTube videos you sent, I knew this deep dive was going to be interesting.
Totally. Talk about blurring the lines, right?
Mhm.
Between fantasy and reality. And kind of fascinating, but also a little creepy, to be honest. I mean, are we really at the point where AI can create images that are so real, you'd swear they were actual people?
That's exactly what Flux is getting at, creating that crazy level of photorealism. I mean, it's seriously awe-inspiring, but yeah, also a little unnerving. But it's not just about like creating lifelike images. It's the whole ecosystem around Flux, with it being open source and the customization. That's what's really shaking things up.
Okay, now you got me curious. So for those of us who might be, familiar with Midjourney or DALL-E, what makes Flux stand out?
Well, you got to remember that those big names, they're essentially what you call walled gardens, right? You have to play by their rules with their preset controls. But Flux is like stepping into a world of endless possibilities because it's open source. So basically, anyone can access, modify, even distribute the code behind it.
Okay, I could see how that would be exciting for like developers and tech-savvy people, but what does it actually mean for someone like me? I just want to explore the creative side of AI image generation, you know?
It means you're not stuck with predefined parameters, right? Think of it like this. Midjourney is like ordering a pizza from a menu. You pick what they've got. But with Flux, you're getting the whole recipe book and can tweak anything you want. Want to make a whole new pizza style? Go for it.
I'm starting to get it, but I gotta be honest. All this talk about code and customization makes me feel like I need to go back to school for computer science.
Not at all. You don't need to be some kind of coding whiz to use Flux. Remember that YouTuber who made those images of their dog winning the World Cup?
Yeah.
They were using a version called Schnell, which is surprisingly easy to use.
Wait, so you're saying I could make awesome AI images on my old laptop?
Right.
No need for some crazy powerful computer. Now that's a game changer.
Exactly. That's one of Flux's greatest strengths. It's accessible. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember that other YouTuber who tried to train Flux on pictures of their own face? They ended up looking like a, well, monkey.
Oh, yeah. I gotta admit, that was hilarious. But also a little concerning. Is it really that easy to mess things up?
Well, it just highlights something really crucial about AI. Just because it's open source and you can customize it doesn't mean you can just throw any old data at it and expect amazing results.
So it's not just about access. It's about knowing how to actually use it effectively.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where the deep dive really comes in.
Exactly. It's like, having access to a professional chef's kitchen, right? Sure, you can experiment with fancy ingredients, but if you don't know the basics of cooking, you might end up with a disaster on your hands.
Okay, so garbage in, garbage out. Got it. But going back to Flux for a sec, you mentioned there are different versions.
That's right. Flux actually comes in 3 flavors: Pro, Dev, and, like we were talking about, Schnell.
And each one is like tailored to different kinds of users.
Exactly. Think of Pro as the professional chef version. It's the most powerful, packed with features, but comes with stricter licensing. It's really more for commercial use. Then there's Dev, as you might guess. It's really designed for developers and researchers who want to get their hands dirty with the code and really experiment.
And Schnell's kind of the easy bake version.
Yeah, you could say that. It's the most user-friendly, and what's really important is it's the only version with a completely open source license. So you can use it for anything, commercial or not, no restrictions.
Okay, that clears things up. But let's talk about what everyone's raving about, the actual images themselves. Some of the stuff I've seen in these videos is crazy realistic.
Yeah, the level of photorealism that Flux can achieve is unbelievable, especially when you start digging into these things called LoRAs.
LoRAs. All right, now you're speaking a different language. You're going to have to break that one down. It sounds like some kind of magic AI spell.
It kind of is. LoRAs stands for low-rank adaptations, and it's basically like giving Flux a specialized skill set. It's a way to fine-tune the AI on a specific set of data, like those YouTubers using their own pictures to create those hyper-realistic, super stylized results.
So instead of like training the entire AI model, which I'm guessing takes tons of data and processing power, LoRAs are like adding a plugin to make certain aspects of the image generation better.
You got it. Imagine you're a photographer, right? And you want to specialize in portraits. LoRAs would be like getting yourself that top-of-the-line portrait lens. It wouldn't change your overall photography skills, but it would take your portraits to the next level.
That's a great analogy. So Using LoRAs, could I theoretically train Flux on, say, images of my pet hamster and then generate all these crazy realistic images of him doing, like, I don't know, anything I want?
Absolutely. And it's not just faces or pets either. People are using LoRAs to create everything from specific art styles to fictional characters that look like they stepped right out of the movies.
Now that you mention it, one YouTuber was freaking out about how they use LoRAs to create images in the style of their favorite Renaissance painter, and the results were mind-blowing. It was like having a personal AI art forger.
Exactly. That's the beauty of Flux and LoRAs. They put the power of AI image generation and all its creative possibilities right into your hands.
You also mentioned something about guidance affecting the realism. What's that all about?
Guidance settings. Okay, think of it like this. You're giving Flux a creative brief. The guidance setting is like a dial that controls how closely the AI sticks to your instructions.
So if I crank up the guidance, it's like I'm giving Flex really specific directions, like draw me a photorealistic hamster, but he's wearing a tiny crown, and it's going to try its best to do exactly that.
Exactly. Higher guidance means the AI is going to prioritize matching your prompt as closely as possible. That's often how you get those hyper-realistic images that Flux is becoming known for. It's like giving an architect a super detailed blueprint. Less creative freedom, maybe, but they deliver exactly what you asked for.
And what about lower guidance? What happens when I let Flux, like, do its own thing a bit more?
That's when things get really interesting. With lower guidance, Flux starts to interpret your prompt a little more abstractly. It brings its own kind of artistic flair to the image. Like, it's more like giving a painter a theme or a feeling. They have more room to experiment, maybe even surprise you.
So it's like choosing between a portrait photographer who gets every detail perfect versus an artist who does a more abstract painting that captures, like, your essence. So which way does Flux really shine? High guidance for that photorealism or lower settings for more creative results?
Well, that's the cool part, right? You've got the flexibility to play around and figure out what works for you. I know one of the YouTubers mentioned they found a sweet spot for their style around a guidance value of 2.5. But honestly, it's all about experimenting and seeing what you like. And speaking of flexibility, we got to talk about this image-to-image prompting. Did you see those videos where they used existing images as a starting point in Flux?
Oh yeah, that one that blew my mind was the YouTuber who turned their dog into a World Cup champ with just one text prompt. The idea that you can take any photo and use AI to completely transform it, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It's like having an AI photo editor on steroids. You're not stuck just generating images from scratch. You can feed Flux an existing image and tell it to change parts of it, or even totally change the style of the whole thing.
It makes me think of those cheesy photo booth apps that could age your face or make you look like a celebrity. But this is like next level. Although that attempt to add a lion into that picture of those guys walking through the park, let's just say that lion looked a little out of place.
Right. So that in-painting, where you're basically telling Flux to replace or change certain parts of an image, that's one area where things are still being worked out. Like with any new tech, there's a learning curve, and sometimes the AI doesn't quite get what looks natural to us humans.
Okay, so maybe Flux isn't putting Hollywood special effects artists out of a job yet. But still, the potential is incredible. And then there were those videos where people actually animated the still images using different AI tools. That dog winning the World Cup was suddenly wagging its tail and running around. It's like they're bringing their AI creations to life.
It's a perfect example of how different AI technologies are like joining forces to push the boundaries of what's possible. So Flux creates the image, and then you've got things like Runway Gen 2 and Clink AI. They use their own AI magic to animate the images, add sounds, even create short video clips.
So it's like having a full-on AI production studio at your fingertips. Which leads to the question, are we about to have this huge content creation revolution? Is everyone with a laptop and a bit of creativity suddenly going to be able to create Hollywood-level stuff?
It could happen. What we're seeing with Flux, especially when it's combined with these other AI tools, is this amazing democratization of creative power. The tools are getting easier to use, they're more powerful and more accessible. It's a really exciting time to be a creator.
It's definitely exciting, but also a bit intimidating, to be honest. I can't help but think about the downsides, too. If anyone can create these hyper-realistic images and videos, what's to stop people from using this tech in bad ways?
That's an important point. You know what they say. With great power comes great responsibility. It's definitely something researchers and ethicists are already trying to figure out as AI image generation gets more advanced and more available.
So it's not just about making cool images, it's about using these tools in a responsible way and really thinking about the consequences, good and bad.
Exactly. It's a conversation we as a society need to be having.
You've definitely given me a lot to think about. So we've got accessibility, customization, mind-blowing realism. Is there anything Flux can't do?
As impressive as Flux is, it's not perfect. It still has limitations. For example, it's incredible at photorealism, but certain details still trip it up. Text rendering, for one, it can be a little off sometimes.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's like the text was melting or something in some of
Yeah,
the examples.
right. And faces, they can be incredibly lifelike, but then sometimes they have this like too perfect look. You know what I mean? Like the skin textures can be a little bit off, and it kind of gets into that uncanny valley territory.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even though AI is getting good, it's still just computer-generated images. These aren't real people. But it does make you wonder, how long until even those little imperfections are gone?
That's the million-dollar question. And it brings us back to that thing we were talking about before, those ethical considerations around AI image generation.
Yeah. It's one thing to use Flux to make a picture of my hamster, winning a marathon, just for fun. But it's another thing entirely to think about how this technology could be used to, like, manipulate reality or spread misinformation.
Exactly. It's a really powerful tool. We have to be careful with it.
So where does that leave our listener? They've been on this deep dive with us into Flux and this amazing world of AI image generation. What's the one thing you want them to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we are at this really pivotal moment. AI image generation, it's not some futuristic fantasy anymore. It's here, it's evolving fast, and it has the potential to completely change so many things.
It's exciting, yeah, but also a little bit scary, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But with that excitement comes a responsibility to use these tools, ethically, thoughtfully. Think about how the things you're creating could be perceived, how they could be used, maybe even misused.
It's like we're all pioneers going into this unknown territory, and we need to be careful about the footprints we're leaving behind.
Exactly. So as you start exploring Flux and other AI tools, keep asking questions, keep experimenting, but always remember that your creations can have a real impact.
This has been an amazing deep dive. Thanks for walking us through all of this. I feel like I've learned a ton.
It's been my pleasure. I always love talking about AI and its potential, especially with someone as enthusiastic as you.
Well, I'm a quick learner when it comes to fascinating topics like this. And for our listener out there, keep exploring, keep that curiosity alive. The world of AI image generation is changing every day. Who knows what amazing things are waiting right around the corner. Until next time, happy creating.